This archival record concerns the disappearance of Susan Rivers. The case was not opened when she vanished. It was opened when her absence began to behave incorrectly. Susan Rivers was reported missing on April 9th. No distress call was logged. No emergency signal was transmitted. No witnesses reported unusual behavior. At the time, there was no indication that her disappearance required intervention. Susan Rivers was traveling abroad with her partner, Daniel Keller. The trip had been planned in advance. Flights confirmed, hotel reservation active, payment records verified. They were scheduled to return together. Only Daniel returned. He stated that Susan chose to remain behind. He provided no written explanation. No disagreement was reported. No medical issue was disclosed. This account was accepted provisionally. Susan's daughter, Emma Rivers, reported the disappearance 46 hours later. She stated that her mother had not responded to messages or calls, that this silence was not typical, that no prior notice had been given. The report was logged. No immediate action followed. Susan Rivers was an adult. Her travel was voluntary. No crime had been alleged. Emma accessed her mother's personal laptop 3 days after the last confirmed contact. The device was powered on. It had not entered sleep mode. No shutdown event had been recorded. An email draft was open. No subject line. No recipient. The text consisted of a single sentence. "If anything changes, I'll explain later." The draft showed multiple revisions. The timestamps were inconsistent. The most recent edit occurred after Susan Rivers had already been reported missing. Emma continued reviewing accessible accounts. Cloud storage showed recent activity. Folders had been reorganized. Older files had been opened. Nothing had been deleted. Photographs from previous years had been accessed and resorted. Metadata confirmed that this activity occurred after Susan's disappearance. The pattern suggested familiarity, not intrusion. Search history revealed several recent queries. Legal implications of extended absence. How long before a missing adult is declared deceased? Can accounts remain active without confirmation? All searches were conducted late at night, across different networks, within narrow time windows. Emma contacted Daniel Keller. His second statement differed slightly from the first, not in content, but in sequence. He now claims Susan left the hotel early on the morning of their scheduled return. Security cameras confirmed that Susan entered the elevator. No footage showed her exiting. The hotel keycard remained active. The room was not formally checked out. No luggage was missing. Authorities reviewed the available data. No signs of coercion were identified. No financial anomalies were detected. No evidence of violence was found. Susan Rivers was classified as a voluntary missing adult. The case was closed. Susan Rivers did not disappear completely. Her digital presence persisted. Activity became infrequent, minimal, controlled. Accounts remained logged in. Content was viewed. No messages were sent. One interaction was recorded. A brief comment on an unrelated post. "Still here." The comment was deleted seconds later. The platform retained a cached copy. Emma noticed another inconsistency. Her mother's digital calendar updated automatically 2 days after the disappearance. A recurring reminder appeared. No title, no description, only a time. 2 a.m. every night. Device logs confirmed that Susan Rivers' phone had not been powered on since April 9th. The laptop remained active. It connected intermittently. It never changed location. Smart home systems recorded scheduled actions. Lights activated. Lights deactivated. Thermostat adjusted. No motion was detected. 9 days after the disappearance, a new login occurred. The credentials were correct. The device was recognized. The network matched Susan's home connection. The apartment was unoccupied. This activity triggered a system flag. The archival record was opened. This section of the record contains no conclusions, only verified sequence, only confirmed continuity. The following section documents how Susan Rivers' absence was maintained without interruption. Maintaining an absence requires less effort than explaining one. In the days following Susan Rivers' disappearance, no official alerts were triggered, no bank freezes, no account suspensions, no identity verification requests. From a systems perspective, Susan remained valid. Emma Rivers attempted to establish a pattern. She compared her mother's recent activity to older behavior. The differences were subtle. Susan no longer initiated contact. She only reacted. Content was viewed, never created. Messages were read, never answered. This reduced visibility without triggering concern. Platform analytics confirmed a gradual decline in exposure. Susan's accounts appeared less frequently in recommendation feeds. Search indexing deprioritized her profiles. This was not a malfunction. It was the expected outcome of minimal engagement. Financial records showed a similar shift. Primary accounts remained untouched. No purchases, no withdrawals. Secondary accounts, previously inactive, registered limited movement. Amounts were small. Transfers were spaced days apart, always below reporting thresholds. Funds were not accumulated, they circulated. This prevented two outcomes: automatic review and closure. Daniel Keller's involvement was reviewed again. His travel records matched his statements. His payments aligned with the itinerary. However, device logs indicated that his phone connected to Susan's laptop after her disappearance. Not directly, through an intermediary network. The connection lasted under 3 minutes. No files were transferred. No commands were recorded. Access was confirmed. When questioned, Daniel acknowledged the connection. He stated that Susan had asked him to check something. He could not specify what. He said the request was brief, calm, unremarkable. He was instructed not to follow up. No further contact between them was recorded. Emma located older correspondence that had not initially appeared relevant. Emails archived more than 2 years earlier. The sender used a neutral address. No personal identifiers. The messages were procedural. They referenced documentation, jurisdiction, and timing. One sentence appeared repeatedly. Reduce the digital footprint first. Physical distance resolves itself. Emma could not determine whether Susan had followed this guidance, but subsequent activity suggested preparation, not reaction. Further review revealed that Susan had enabled remote access software on her laptop months before the trip. The software was properly configured. It was inactive. It had not been used recently, which implied that access had already occurred. This did not indicate intrusion. It indicated consent. Emma reported these findings to authorities. They were documented. They did not alter the case status. Susan Rivers was not classified as endangered. No crime had been established. Digital activity alone did not justify escalation. Susan's online presence continued, infrequent, predictable. Each interaction appeared deliberate. No errors. No accidental disclosures. Nothing that required correction. This suggested oversight. Not constant, but sufficient. Automated systems adjusted accordingly. Notifications aged out. Pending flags expired. The absence stabilized. Susan Rivers no longer generated questions. Emma attempted one final contact. She sent a message to an address Susan rarely used. The message contained one sentence: "Please tell me if you're safe." The message was read. No response followed. At this stage, there was nothing left to investigate directly. The absence had become normalized. The next section of the record documents how this absence was finalized and why it did not require ongoing maintenance. Finalizing an absence does not require disappearance. It requires stability. By the third week after Susan Rivers was reported missing, all dependent systems had adjusted. No pending verifications remained. No automated checks were scheduled. No alerts were active. Susan's status no longer required attention. This did not occur suddenly. It occurred gradually. Each system responded independently. Each adjustment appeared minor. Together, they removed Susan Rivers from relevance. Employment records showed no irregularities. Susan had taken extended leave before traveling. Her return date was undefined. No violation was recorded. Health insurance remained active. No claims were filed. No follow-up was required. Educational records for Emma remained unchanged. There was no legal dependency that required resolution. This was critical. Absence becomes actionable only when it creates obligation. Susan Rivers left none. Emma Rivers continued to monitor activity. Nothing changed. The pattern remained consistent. Minimal engagement, no outbound communication, no deviation. The absence held. Daniel Keller was contacted one final time as part of routine review. He confirmed that he had not heard from Susan since their return. He did not express concern. He did not request updates. He complied with all inquiries. Daniel Keller was not investigated further. There was no cause. He had fulfilled his role without exceeding it. System audits revealed that Susan's identifiers were still present. They had not been removed. They had been disconnected. Search queries no longer resolved. Cross-references returned null. This prevented reconstruction, not by deletion, but by separation. No single action achieved this. It was the result of multiple compliant requests processed over time. Each request was legitimate. Each was approved individually. No anomaly was detected. From an archival standpoint, this meant the case could not be reopened. There was no new data to attach. No unresolved contradiction remained. Susan Rivers did not violate procedure. She complied with it. Emma Rivers exhausted all formal options. She filed no further reports. She received no further responses. Her efforts did not fail. They concluded. At this point, Susan Rivers was no longer classified as missing. She was classified as inactive. This distinction mattered. Inactive cases resolve automatically. Digital presence stabilized completely. No further logins were required. No oversight was necessary. The system no longer expected activity. Susan Rivers's absence had reached equilibrium. The remaining material in this record addresses one final detail. Not the disappearance itself, but the reason it did not require any further explanation. The absence of Susan Rivers did not require a conclusion. It required acceptance. By the time all dependent systems stabilized, there was nothing left to resolve. No unresolved alerts, no outstanding obligations, no conflicting records. From an administrative perspective, the situation was complete. Emma Rivers remained the only active variable. She continued to monitor her mother's accounts long after official processes had ended. There was no new activity, no confirmation, no denial, only consistency. Emma requested access to archived service logs through formal channels. The request was denied, not due to restriction, due to irrelevance. The systems no longer recognized Susan Rivers as requiring review. This denial followed protocol. Once a case reaches inactive status, additional data cannot be attached. Doing so would imply instability. There was none. The final interaction attributed to Susan Rivers occurred 31 days after her disappearance. It was not a message. It was not a login. It was a settings confirmation, a scheduled verification, automatically approved. After that point, no further activity was recorded. Not because access was revoked, because none was required. Susan Rivers had reached a state of administrative invisibility. She was not missing. She was no longer queried. Daniel Keller closed all remaining ties. Joint accounts were dissolved through standard procedures. No disputes were filed. No explanations were requested. He did not seek clarification. He did not ask to reopen the case. His cooperation was complete. Daniel Keller was not investigated further. There was no deviation from expected behavior. His involvement did not exceed facilitation. That distinction mattered. Emma Rivers attempted one final action. She submitted a missing persons update requesting reclassification. The request was processed. It returned unchanged. Susan Rivers remained inactive. The reason was documented internally, not as a narrative, as a condition. No evidence of harm, no legal dependency, no systemic contradiction. In such cases, absence resolves itself. This record exists because the process succeeded, not because it failed. Susan Rivers did not disappear unexpectedly. She exited within parameters. There was no single moment that caused her to vanish. There was no single decision that could be reversed. The outcome was cumulative. Each compliant action reduced visibility. Each accepted procedure removed necessity. Susan Rivers is not unaccounted for. She is accounted for as complete. Her absence does not represent a gap. It represents a resolved state. No further review is scheduled. End of record.